The summer sun beat down on the ancient palace gates as tourists gathered around the ceremonial guards standing at attention. Among the crowd stood 17-year-old Marcus Chen, scrolling through his phone with a bored expression plastered across his face. His designer sneakers tapped impatiently against the cobblestone while his parents snapped photos like excited children. Marcus had made it clear from the moment they boarded the plane that this family vacation was beneath him. While his parents saved for 2 years to afford this European trip, Marcus complained about the hotel's Wi-Fi speed and the lack of trendy restaurants. His younger sister Emma tried to enjoy the sights, but Marcus's constant negativity cast a shadow over everything. The royal guard stood perfectly still in their traditional uniforms, their faces expressionless despite the heat. Tourists whispered in awe at their discipline, taking careful photos from a respectful distance. But Marcus saw something different. He saw an opportunity to prove how cool and fearless he was to his online followers. "Dad, this is so boring," Marcus groaned loudly, making sure nearby tourists could hear him. "These guys are just standing there like statues." "What's the big deal?" His father, Robert, smiled patiently. "Son, these guards represent centuries of tradition. They protect the royal family and maintain an important ceremonial role." Marcus rolled his eyes dramatically. "It's just a job, Dad. They're basically mall cops in fancy costumes." He laughed at his own joke, but his parents exchanged worried glances. Emma tugged at her brother's sleeve. "Marcus, please don't be rude. Everyone's trying to enjoy this." "Oh, come on," Marcus said, shaking her off. "You really think these guys are special? Watch this." He stepped away from his family, phone in hand, already planning his viral moment. Marcus approached one of the guards, a tall man with steel-gray eyes and a perfectly pressed uniform adorned with medals. The guard's name was Captain William Hayes, though Marcus didn't bother to wonder about the person behind the uniform. To Marcus, he was just a prop for entertainment. "Hey, statue man," Marcus called out, standing just inches from the guard's face. A few tourists gasped, stepping back. "Can you even hear me in there? Or are you just a wax figure?" He waved his hand in front of the guard's face, laughing. Captain Hayes didn't flinch. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon, his posture unchanged. Years of training had taught him to ignore provocations, to maintain dignity in the face of disrespect. But Marcus wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone and started filming. "Check this out, guys," he said to his camera, addressing his followers. "I'm going to make this robot break character. How much do you want to bet I can get him to crack?" His mother rushed forward. "Marcus, stop this right now. You're being incredibly disrespectful." "Mom, chill out. It's just for fun. These guys probably appreciate someone making their boring job more interesting." Marcus turned back to the guard, emboldened by the growing crowd of onlookers. He started making faces, pulling silly expressions inches from the captain's face. Some tourists laughed nervously while others looked uncomfortable. An elderly woman shook her head in disapproval, but Marcus didn't care. In his mind, he was creating content, gaining attention, proving he was braver than everyone else. "You know what I think?" Marcus said loudly. "I think anyone could do this job. It doesn't take skill to stand still. My little sister could do this. Heck, a mannequin could do this." He reached out as if to poke the guard's chest. That's when things changed. In a movement so swift and precise it seemed almost choreographed, Captain Hayes' hand caught Marcus's wrist mid-air. The grip was firm but not painful, just enough to stop the motion completely. The guard's eyes, which had been staring ahead, now locked directly onto Marcus's face. The teenager froze. The smirk vanished from his lips. For the first time in the entire vacation, Marcus was speechless. "Young man," Captain Hayes said, his voice low but commanding, carrying the weight of authority earned through decades of service, "you will step back behind the designated line. You will cease filming, and you will show the respect that this institution, this uniform, and this position deserve." Marcus's hand trembled slightly in the guard's grip. The captain's gaze wasn't angry or threatening. It was something far more powerful, deeply disappointed. It was the look of a man who had served his country with honor, who had seen real hardship and sacrifice, looking at a boy who understood neither. "Do you understand me?" the captain asked. Marcus managed a weak nod. His phone had stopped recording, hanging limply in his other hand. The crowd around them had gone completely silent. Even the other tourists had stopped taking photos, watching the scene unfold with rapt attention. Captain Hayes released Marcus's wrist and returned to his position, once again becoming perfectly still. But something had shifted. The teenager stumbled backward, his face flushed with embarrassment. His earlier bravado had evaporated like morning mist. Robert approached his son, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Let's go, Marcus," he said quietly, his voice tinged with disappointment. As the Chen family walked away from the palace gates, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling of the captain's eyes on him, that look of profound disappointment. For the first time in years, he felt genuinely small, and not in a way that made him angry or defiant. He felt ashamed. Emma walked beside him silently while their parents led the way to a nearby cafe. Marcus kept replaying the moment in his mind. The swift movement, the firm grip, the commanding voice. The guard hadn't yelled or threatened him. He hadn't needed to. His presence alone, his dignity and bearing, had communicated more than any harsh words could have. That evening, back at the hotel, Marcus sat on his bed staring at his phone. He had the video queued up, ready to delete or post. His followers were waiting for new content. But every time he looked at the thumbnail, showing his cocky expression before the guard caught his wrist, he felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him. His father knocked on the door and entered without waiting for a response. "We need to talk, son," Robert said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "What happened today wasn't okay. That guard showed you more respect than you showed him, even when you were being deliberately provocative." Marcus wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the words wouldn't come. Deep down, he knew his father was right. Marcus barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Captain Hayes's disappointed face, heard the firm command in his voice. The hotel room felt stuffy despite the air conditioning, and the city lights filtering through the curtains seemed to mock his restlessness. By morning, his family had decided to continue with their planned itinerary, visiting the National Museum a few blocks from their hotel. Marcus dragged himself out of bed, still wearing the shame of yesterday's incident like an uncomfortable jacket he couldn't remove. At breakfast, Emma tried to lighten the mood. "They have that special exhibit on ancient armor today. Dad said we might even see some weapons used by the palace guards centuries ago." Marcus nodded absently, pushing his eggs around his plate. His mother exchanged a glance with his father, both surprised by their son's unusual quietness. Normally, Marcus would have complained about the museum, insisting he'd rather stay at the hotel on his phone. Today, he simply followed them without protest. The museum was impressive, with marble floors and high ceilings that made every footstep echo. Tour groups moved through the halls like schools of fish, gathering around displays before moving on to the next attraction. The Chen family wandered through exhibits showcasing the country's military history. From medieval times to the present day, Marcus found himself actually paying attention to the displays, reading the plaques that described the role of ceremonial guards throughout history. He learned that the position wasn't just about standing still and looking impressive. These guards were elite soldiers, chosen for their exceptional service records, their physical fitness, and their unwavering discipline. One display caught his attention, a wall of photographs showing guards throughout the decades. His eyes scanned the images until they landed on a familiar face. It was Captain Hayes, much younger but unmistakably the same person. The caption read, "Captain William Hayes, Distinguished Service Medal recipient. Served 3 tours in combat zones before being selected for the Royal Guard. Known for his exceptional leadership and courage under fire." Marcus's stomach dropped. The man he'd mocked, the statue he'd treated like a prop for entertainment, was a decorated war hero. Someone who had risked his life, who had seen things Marcus couldn't begin to imagine. The weight of his disrespect pressed down on him like a physical burden. "Marcus, are you all right?" his mother asked, noticing him staring at the photograph. "That's him," Marcus whispered. "That's the guard from yesterday." Robert approached, reading the caption over his son's shoulder. He placed a hand on Marcus's back but said nothing. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any lecture. As they moved through the museum, Marcus couldn't focus on anything else. His mind kept returning to that photograph, to the medals on the captain's uniform that he'd dismissed as meaningless decorations. He thought about his own life, his privileged existence where the biggest hardship was slow Wi-Fi or an uncool vacation destination. The museum had a small theater, where they played a documentary about the Royal Guards. Marcus's family filed in and he sat in the back row, feeling a strange compulsion to watch. The film showed the rigorous selection process, the months of additional training, the physical and mental demands of the position. One segment featured interviews with current guards. Captain Hayes appeared on screen speaking about his role. "People see us standing still and think it's easy," he said to the camera. "They don't see the hours of training, the physical conditioning required to maintain that posture for hours in all weather conditions. They don't understand that we're not just ceremonial. We're functioning security professionals, constantly alert to potential threats while maintaining our traditional duties." Another guard added, "The hardest part isn't the physical demands or even the verbal abuse we sometimes face from tourists. It's maintaining your composure when someone treats you as less than human, as a photo opportunity, rather than a person with a life, a family, a history of service." Marcus felt sick. The guard's words were describing exactly what he had done. He had treated Captain Hayes as a thing, not a person. He had tried to humiliate someone who had served with honor and distinction, someone who had protected people, possibly saved lives. When the documentary ended, the family emerged into the bright museum halls. Emma tugged at Marcus's sleeve, something she'd been doing since they were little kids when she wanted his attention. "That was really interesting, wasn't it?" Marcus nodded, unable to trust his voice. They walked through a few more exhibits before his father suggested they stop at the museum cafe for lunch. As they sat at a small table near a window overlooking a courtyard, Marcus finally spoke. "I need to apologize to him," he said quietly. His parents looked at him in surprise. Robert set down his sandwich. "To who, son?" "To Captain Hayes, the guard from yesterday. I need to tell him I'm sorry." Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. "I didn't understand. I thought it was just standing around looking tough for tourists. I didn't know about his service, his sacrifice. I was so stupid and disrespectful." His mother reached across the table, squeezing his hand. "I'm proud that you recognize that, Marcus. But apologizing isn't always easy, especially after behaving the way you did." "I know," Marcus said, "but I have to try. I can't just leave things the way they are. He deserves an apology, a real one, not just some half-hearted sorry." Emma smiled at her brother. "When did you get so mature?" Marcus managed a weak smile in return. "Maybe it's about time, huh?" After lunch, Robert made some phone calls, speaking with museum staff and eventually getting connected with someone at the palace administration office. It took several conversations, some explaining and a lot of patience, but eventually, he received information about the proper channels for addressing concerns related to the royal guards. That evening, Marcus sat at the small desk in his hotel room, staring at a blank piece of paper. His father had explained that he could write a formal letter of apology that would be delivered to Captain Hayes through official channels. But Marcus wanted his words to be genuine, meaningful, not just a scripted apology designed to make himself feel better. He picked up the pen and began to write. The words came slowly at first, then faster as emotions he'd been suppressing all day finally found their outlet. He wrote about his arrogance, his lack of understanding, his shameful behavior. He wrote about watching the documentary, learning about the captain's service, realizing the depth of his disrespect. Marcus wrote and rewrote the letter 3 times before he felt it captured what he needed to say. His hand cramped from gripping the pen so tightly, but he persisted. This was important, perhaps the most important thing he'd done in his 17 years. When he finally finished, it was past midnight. He folded the letter carefully, placed it in an envelope, and set it on the desk. Tomorrow his father would help him deliver it through the proper channels. Tomorrow he would take the first real step toward making amends. But Marcus knew that a letter wasn't enough. He needed to face Captain Hayes again, to look the man in the eye and offer his apology in person. The thought terrified him, but he knew it was necessary. Some things couldn't be fixed with written words alone. The next morning arrived with gray clouds hanging low over the city, matching Marcus's nervous mood. He'd barely touched his breakfast, pushing toast around his plate while his family ate in supportive silence. His father had made arrangements through the palace administration office for Marcus to deliver his letter personally during a designated time when Captain Hayes would be off duty. The walk to the palace felt different today. Marcus noticed details he'd ignored before. The intricate carvings on the gates, the pristine condition of the grounds, the respectful distance other tourists maintained from the guards. Everything seemed to carry more weight, more meaning than it had just 2 days ago. a palace administrator. A middle-aged woman named Mrs. Patterson with kind eyes and a professional demeanor met them at a side entrance. "You must be the Chen family," she said warmly, though Marcus detected a hint of reservation in her tone. She'd probably heard about the incident. "Thank you for arranging this," Robert said, shaking her hand. Mrs. Patterson nodded. "Captain Hayes agreed to meet with your son. I must tell you, this is highly unusual. But the captain felt it was important for reasons he didn't fully explain." She looked at Marcus. "He's waiting in the West meeting room. Your family can wait here." Marcus's mother gave him an encouraging hug. "Be honest and sincere. That's all you can do." Emma squeezed his hand. "You've got this, big brother." Following Mrs. Patterson down a corridor lined with portraits of past monarchs and military leaders, Marcus felt his heart hammering against his ribs. The envelope containing his letter felt like it weighed 100 pounds in his jacket pocket. They stopped at a wooden door and Mrs. Patterson knocked twice before opening it. "Captain Hayes, young Mr. Chen is here." The room was simple but elegant, with a large window overlooking a private garden. Captain Hayes stood by that window, now wearing civilian clothes, a simple button-down shirt and dark trousers. Without his ceremonial uniform, he looked more human, more approachable, yet somehow even more intimidating. Here was a man comfortable in his own skin, someone who didn't need a uniform to command respect. The captain turned, his expression neutral. "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. Please leave us." When the door clicked shut, silence filled the room. Marcus stood awkwardly near the entrance, suddenly forgetting every carefully rehearsed word. Captain Hayes gestured to two chairs arranged facing each other. "Sit," he said, not unkindly. Marcus sat, his hands trembling slightly. The captain took the opposite chair, leaning back with the patient posture of someone who had all the time in the world. "I'm told you wanted to speak with me," Captain Hayes began. "That took courage coming back here. Most people would have simply left the country, forgotten the whole incident." "I couldn't do that, sir," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not after what I did. Not after I learned who you really are." The captain's eyebrow raised slightly. "And who am I?" Marcus pulled the letter from his pocket but didn't hand it over yet. "I saw your photograph at the museum yesterday. I read about your service, your medals, everything you've done. I watched a documentary where you talked about being a guard, about how people treat you." He paused, fighting back the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "I was one of those people. I was exactly what you described, treating you like you weren't human, like you were just there for my entertainment." Captain Hayes remained silent, his expression unreadable. "I wrote this letter," Marcus continued, holding up the envelope with a shaking hand. "But I realized that hiding behind words on paper wasn't enough. I needed to look you in the eye and tell you that I'm sorry. I'm truly deeply sorry for disrespecting you, for mocking your service, for being so incredibly arrogant and ignorant." The teenager's voice cracked on the last words. A tear rolled down his cheek and he didn't bother wiping it away. "You were a soldier. You risked your life. You've done things I can't even imagine to protect people, to serve your country, and I treated you like a joke, like some kind of entertainment. I'm ashamed of who I was 2 days ago. I'm ashamed that it took learning about your past to realize I should have treated you with respect anyway, regardless of your history." Captain Hayes leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. His stern expression had softened slightly. "Do you know why I agreed to meet with you?" Marcus shook his head, not trusting his voice. "Because most people never apologize," the captain said. "Most people do exactly what you did, treating guards as objects, as photo opportunities. They laugh, they mock, they try to make us break character, and then they leave, never thinking about it again. The fact that you came back, that you took the time to learn, to understand, to feel genuine remorse, that tells me something important about your character." "It tells you I'm a terrible person?" Marcus offered weakly. "No," the captain said firmly. "It tells me you're capable of growth. You made a mistake, a significant one, but you're young. Young people make mistakes. The question is whether they learn from them or repeat them." Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I want to learn. I want to be better than I was." Captain Hayes stood and walked to the window, looking out at the garden. "When I was your age, I was arrogant too. I thought I knew everything, thought I was invincible. Then life taught me otherwise. I joined the military not out of some noble calling, but because I wanted adventure, wanted to prove how tough I was." He turned back to face Marcus. "My first deployment changed everything. I saw real courage, real sacrifice. I watched people give everything for their comrades, for strangers, for ideals bigger than themselves. I learned that true strength isn't about showing off or proving anything to anyone. It's about service, discipline, and quiet dignity. Marcus listened, hanging on every word. Being a royal guard isn't just about tradition, the captain continued. It's about representing something larger than myself. Every day I stand at those gates, I'm honoring everyone who served before me, everyone who sacrificed for this country. When tourists mock us, they're not just mocking me personally, they're mocking that entire legacy. I understand that now, Marcus said. I'm so sorry I was part of that. The captain returned to his chair. Your apology is accepted, Marcus, but I want you to understand something. I'm not accepting it to make you feel better, or to absolve you of guilt. I'm accepting it because I believe you've genuinely learned something valuable. The question is, what will you do with that lesson? Marcus thought carefully before responding. I want to be more thoughtful, more respectful. I want to think about other people, really see them as people, not just extras in my life story. I want to understand that everyone has a history, a struggle, something that makes them worthy of respect even if I don't know what it is. Captain Hayes nodded slowly. That's a good start, but it's only a start. The real test comes when you're back home, when the emotion of this moment fades, when you're surrounded by friends who might encourage the same behavior you displayed here. Will you have the courage to be different then? I don't know, Marcus admitted. I hope so. I really hope so. Honesty, the captain said with what might have been the ghost of a smile. That's important too. They sat in silence for a moment, a silence that felt peaceful rather than awkward. Marcus felt something shift inside him, like a weight he'd been carrying for years finally being lifted. Not completely gone, but lighter somehow. Captain Hayes stood and walked to a bookshelf along the wall, pulling down a worn leather journal. He returned to his seat, holding the book thoughtfully. I want to show you something. This is my journal from my first deployment. I was 22 years old, fresh out of advanced training, thinking I was invincible. He opened to a page marked with a faded ribbon. Listen to this entry. Told off a local merchant today for moving too slowly. Made my squad laugh. Felt good to assert authority. That was me, Marcus. Arrogant, thoughtless, caring more about looking tough than treating people with dignity. Marcus leaned forward, surprised by the captain's vulnerability. 3 pages later, the captain continued, flipping ahead. I wrote this. Today I learned that merchant I insulted lost his son in a bombing last month. He wasn't moving slowly to irritate me. He was moving slowly because he was broken inside. I apologized, but the damage was done. I can't take back my words or my attitude. All I can do is be better. The captain closed the journal carefully. I've carried that lesson for 25 years. Every person you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. Every interaction is an opportunity to add kindness to the world or to add cruelty. We get to choose every single time. Did the merchant forgive you? Marcus asked quietly. He did eventually, but more importantly, I learned not to need that forgiveness to change my behavior. I couldn't go back and fix what I'd done, but I could move forward differently. That's what I want you to understand. This moment right here, this conversation, it's not the end of your journey. It's the beginning. Marcus nodded, absorbing the weight of those words. Can I ask you something, sir? Go ahead. When I was standing there yesterday mocking you, trying to make you react, what were you thinking? How did you stay so calm? Captain Hayes smiled, a real smile this time. I was thinking about a lot of things. I was thinking about my daughter who's about your age. I was hoping that if she ever made a mistake like you were making, someone would show her grace while also teaching her a lesson. I was thinking about my training, about maintaining composure, and honestly, I was thinking about how young you looked, how much you reminded me of myself at that age. I reminded you of yourself? Marcus asked, surprised. The arrogance, the need for attention, the complete lack of awareness about how your actions affect others. Yes, you reminded me very much of young William Hayes, the soldier who thought he had everything figured out. The captain's expression grew serious again. But here's the difference. You've been given an opportunity to change course much earlier than I was. Don't waste it. Marcus pulled out the letter he'd written. I still want you to have this, even though we've talked. I spent hours on it trying to put everything into words. Captain Hayes took the envelope, opening it carefully. He read silently, his eyes moving across Marcus's handwritten words. When he finished, he folded the letter back into the envelope. This is well written. You've got a good heart, Marcus. Don't let the world harden it, but don't let it stay naive either. Find the balance between compassion and strength. How do I do that? Marcus asked. By practicing every day. By choosing to see people, really see them. By asking yourself before you act, is this adding something good to the world, or am I just serving my own ego? The captain stood, indicating their meeting was drawing to a close. And by remembering this feeling you have right now, this shame and regret. Not to punish yourself, but to motivate yourself to be better. Marcus stood as well, suddenly not wanting the conversation to end. There was something about Captain Hayes, a wisdom and groundedness that Marcus had never encountered before. His parents were good people, loving people, but they'd never challenged him the way this man had in just 2 brief encounters. "Sir, can I ask one more thing?" Marcus said as they walked toward the door. "Of course. The medals you were wearing yesterday, what were they for?" Captain Hayes paused, his hand on the doorknob. "The Distinguished Service Medal was for actions during an ambush where my unit was pinned down. I managed to coordinate an evacuation of wounded soldiers while under fire. The others are for various campaigns and length of service. But Marcus, those medals don't make me better than anyone else. They represent moments where I did what needed to be done, what any good soldier would have done. That seems like more than just doing what needed to be done," Marcus said. "Perhaps, but here's what I want you to understand. Those medals represent the best moments of my military career. But they don't erase the mistakes I made, the times I failed, the people I hurt with thoughtless words or actions. We're all complicated, Marcus. We're all capable of both great kindness and great cruelty. The goal is to tip the scales toward kindness as often as possible." They stepped out into the corridor where Marcus's family waited. Emma jumped up immediately, reading her brother's face for clues about how the meeting went. His parents rose more slowly, respectful and cautious. Captain Hayes extended his hand to Robert. "You have a good son, Mr. Chen. He made a mistake, but he's taking responsibility for it. That's rare and commendable." Robert shook his hand firmly. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with him. I know this was unusual." "Unusual, yes, but important." The captain turned to Marcus's mother. "Mrs. Chen, you should be proud. It takes courage to admit you're wrong and to seek to make amends." Marcus's mother had tears in her eyes. "Thank you for showing him grace, and thank you for your service." Emma, never one to stay quiet for long, spoke up. "Are you really a war hero?" Captain Hayes smiled at her directness. "I'm a soldier who did his job, young lady. The real heroes are the ones who didn't come home. I just try to honor their memory by living well and serving faithfully." Mrs. Patterson appeared at the end of the corridor, signaling that their time was up. The palace had schedules to maintain, protocols to follow. As the Chen family prepared to leave, Captain Hayes placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "Remember what we talked about?" he said quietly. "This isn't about guilt or shame anymore. It's about growth and choice. Every day you get to choose who you want to be. Choose wisely." "I will, sir. Thank you for everything." As they walked back through the palace corridors toward the exit, Marcus felt different. Not completely transformed, not suddenly perfect, but changed in some fundamental way. It was as if someone had adjusted his internal compass, pointing him in a direction he'd never considered before. Outside, the gray clouds had parted, revealing brilliant sunshine. The symbolic timing wasn't lost on anyone. Emma linked her arm through Marcus's as they walked. "So was it awful?" "No," Marcus said thoughtfully. "It was actually exactly what I needed. He wasn't mean or harsh. He just helped me understand things I should have understood all along." His father put an arm around his shoulders. "Growth is painful sometimes, son, but it's necessary. I'm proud of you for facing this head-on instead of running from it." That evening, as they had dinner at a small restaurant near their hotel, the family atmosphere felt lighter, more genuine. Marcus participated in the conversation without his usual sarcasm or complaints. He asked Emma about her favorite parts of the trip. He thanked the waiter by name after reading his name tag. Small things, perhaps, but everyone noticed. Later, lying in bed, Marcus pulled out his phone. He found the video he'd taken of himself mocking the guard. His finger hovered over the delete button for a long moment. Marcus stared at the video on his phone screen, watching his past self make faces and cruel jokes. His thumb moved to press delete, but something made him pause. Captain Hayes had said to remember this feeling, to use it as motivation rather than punishment. Maybe keeping the video, not to share but to remember, was part of that. He created a private folder on his phone, moved the video there, and titled it simply, Remember. Then he opened his social media, where his followers had been asking about new content. Instead of the mocking video they expected, Marcus began typing a different kind of post. I did something really stupid a few days ago. I disrespected someone who deserved nothing but honor. I'm not going to share that video or talk about the details, but I want to share what I learned. Every person you meet has a story you don't know. Every person deserves basic respect, regardless of their job or what you think about them. I've been privileged and arrogant, and I'm working on being better. If you've ever treated someone badly for a laugh or for attention, I'm asking you to think about that person as someone's son or daughter, brother or sister, parent or friend. We can all do better, starting with me. He hit post before he could second-guess himself. Within minutes, responses started coming in. Some were supportive, some confused, and a few were mocking. One comment stood out. Did Marcus get hacked? This doesn't sound like him at all. Emma, who followed her brother's accounts, knocked on his door and entered without waiting. Did you really just post that? Yeah, Marcus said, setting his phone face down on the nightstand. Probably killed my follower count, but I don't really care anymore. Those people don't know me. They just like the arrogant jerk I was pretending to be. Emma sat on the edge of his bed. You weren't pretending, Marcus. That was really you. But maybe that doesn't have to be who you are anymore. Her words stung because they were true. He hadn't been playing a character. That entitled, disrespectful teenager was him, the real him, shaped by years of privilege and a lack of consequences. But Captain Hayes was right. He could choose to be different starting now. Emma, have I been a terrible brother? She considered the question seriously. Sometimes, yeah. You've been pretty self-centered. But you've also been there for me when it really mattered, like when I was being bullied in 6th grade. You shut that down fast. So you're not all bad. You're just, I don't know, finally growing up, maybe? Marcus smiled despite himself. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just never listened before. The next morning, the family visited one more museum. This one focused on the country's social history. Marcus found himself drawn to an exhibit about ordinary citizens who had shown extraordinary courage during difficult times. There was a school teacher who hid refugees during a war, a factory worker who exposed dangerous working conditions, a nurse who stayed at her post during an epidemic when others fled. None of these people were famous. None had medals or monuments. But each had made a choice to do what was right despite personal cost. Marcus read every plaque, studied every photograph, feeling something shift further inside him. At lunch, his father noticed his thoughtful mood. What are you thinking about, son? I'm thinking about how many chances I've had that other people never get. Good schools, nice clothes, family vacations, all of it. And what have I done with those advantages? Made fun of people online, complained about everything, acted like the world owed me something. Marcus pushed his sandwich around his plate. I want to do something meaningful with my life, Dad. I just don't know what that looks like yet. Robert smiled, the kind of proud smile that reaches the eyes. You don't have to figure it all out today, Marcus. You're 17, but recognizing that you want to contribute something positive, that's the first step. The path will reveal itself if you stay open to it. The family's last full day in the country arrived too quickly. They had planned to visit the famous gardens on the outskirts of the city, but Marcus made an unexpected request that morning at breakfast. Could we go back to the palace? He asked, just one more time. I know we can't meet with Captain Hayes again, but I'd like to see the changing of the guard ceremony. I read that it happens at noon, and apparently it's actually really significant historically. His parents exchanged pleased glances. The fact that Marcus was showing genuine interest in something cultural, something beyond his phone screen, felt like witnessing a small miracle. They arrived at the palace gates 40 minutes before noon, joining a crowd that was already forming. This time, Marcus made sure to stand behind the designated line, and when other tourists pushed forward or made rude comments, he felt a flash of defensive anger on behalf of the guards. One young man, probably in his early 20s, started making jokes about the guards being frozen robots. His friends laughed, encouraging him. Marcus felt his jaw clench. He thought about Captain Hayes, about his service, his sacrifice, the weight of the uniform and what it represented. Before he could stop himself, Marcus stepped forward. Hey man, those guards are real people with real lives. Maybe show some respect? The guy turned, sizing Marcus up. What's it to you? They're just standing there. "They're serving their country," Marcus said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "They're highly trained soldiers who earned this position. Making fun of them says more about you than it does about them." The guy's friends went quiet. A few nearby tourists nodded in agreement. The young man's face reddened. "Whatever, dude. It's not that serious. Maybe it should be," Marcus replied. Then more gently, "I made the same mistake a few days ago. Trust me, you don't want to be that person." The guy looked uncomfortable but muttered an apology and moved back behind the line with his friends. Emma grabbed Marcus's arm, squeezing it with pride. His mother had tears in her eyes again, but happy ones this time. The changing of the guard ceremony began precisely at noon. Unlike the casual tourist photos and chatter Marcus had witnessed before, this was a formal ritual full of precision and meaning. The guards moved in perfect synchronization, their movements sharp and deliberate. A military band played traditional music, and an officer read a proclamation that dated back centuries. Marcus watched, transfixed. He understood now that this wasn't just pageantry or tourism. It was living history, a connection to the past, a demonstration of discipline and honor. When Captain Hayes emerged as part of the relief guard, Marcus felt his breath catch. The captain's face was composed, professional, but as his unit marched past the crowd, his eyes briefly met Marcus's. There was no smile, but there was recognition and something that might have been approval. It lasted only a second before the captain's gaze returned forward. But it was enough. After the ceremony concluded, the Chen family spent the afternoon exploring the gardens they'd originally planned to visit. The flowers were spectacular, the pathways peaceful, and for once Marcus wasn't itching to leave or complaining about being bored. He took photos not for social media, but to remember the beauty of the moment. That evening, their last night abroad, the family had a special dinner at an upscale restaurant. Over dessert, Robert raised his glass. "I want to make a toast." This trip didn't go exactly as planned, but sometimes the best lessons come from unexpected places. "Marcus, I've watched you grow more in the past few days than in the past few years. I'm proud of the young man you're becoming." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Thanks, Dad. I'm sorry for how I acted at the beginning of this trip. I'm sorry for a lot of things, actually. But I'm going to do better. I promise." "We know you will," his mother said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand, "and we'll be here to support you through it." Emma lifted her juice glass. "To Marcus finally becoming less annoying." Everyone laughed, and Marcus didn't even protest. He deserved that and much more. The family clinked glasses, and in that moment Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: genuine contentment. Not the hollow satisfaction of online likes or the temporary thrill of making someone laugh at another's expense, but real peace. Later, as they walked back to the hotel through lamplit streets, Marcus lagged behind his family slightly, taking in the city one last time. He thought about Captain Hayes standing at his post, about the journal entry the captain had shared, about the merchant who had lost his son. He thought about all the people in the world carrying invisible burdens, fighting battles no one else could see. He thought about the power of a single choice to be kind instead of cruel, thoughtful instead of thoughtless. And he thought about the person he wanted to become, not overnight but gradually, through consistent choices and conscious effort. His phone buzzed with a notification. His social media post had gotten hundreds of responses. Some followers had unfollowed him, but others had shared their own stories of learning difficult lessons. A few people mentioned that his post had made them reconsider their own behavior. One message stood out. "Thank you for being honest. I needed to hear this today." Marcus realized that vulnerability, honesty, and growth were more powerful than any carefully crafted image of coolness or invincibility. By sharing his failure and his learning, he'd connected with people in a way his previous content never had. Back in the hotel room, Marcus began packing his suitcase for tomorrow's flight home. Among his belongings, he found the tourism brochure about the palace and the royal guards. On impulse, he tucked it carefully into his carry-on bag, along with a small journal he'd bought at the museum gift shop. If Captain Hayes could keep a journal to track his growth and remember his lessons, Marcus could do the same. He opened to the first page and wrote the date, then a single sentence. "Today I learned that respect isn't about agreeing with someone or thinking they're important. It's about recognizing their humanity and honoring it, regardless of who they are or what they do." It was a start. A small one, but a start nonetheless. Tomorrow they would fly home, back to his regular life, his school, his friends. The real test would come then, when the emotional impact of this trip began to fade, when old habits tried to reassert themselves. But Marcus felt different. Not perfect, not completely transformed, but fundamentally changed. He'd looked into the mirror of his own behavior and hadn't liked what he'd seen. More importantly, he'd been given the grace of a second chance and the wisdom of someone who'd walked a similar path. 3 months had passed since the Chen family returned home from their trip. Marcus sat in his usual spot at the back of his high school cafeteria, but something was different. Instead of scrolling through his phone and ignoring everyone around him, he was actually engaged in conversation with his friends. "So you really just called out that guy for being disrespectful?" his friend Jake asked, skeptical. "That doesn't sound like you, man." Marcus shrugged. "People change, or at least they should try to." Jake laughed. "Yeah, you've definitely been different since that trip. Less edgy. It's weird, but kind of cool." The changes hadn't been dramatic or overnight. Marcus still struggled with his old impulses, still caught himself being judgmental or self-centered. But now he noticed, and when he noticed, he course-corrected. The journal Captain Hayes had inspired him to keep was filling up with observations, reflections, and reminders to himself. One entry from 2 weeks after returning home read, "Saw a homeless man today and my first thought was to film him for content. Caught myself. Bought him lunch instead. He told me about his time in the Navy. Everyone has a story." Another entry from last month. "Got into an argument with Mom about chores. Started to say something cruel, stopped, apologized instead. She cried. Said she'd been waiting for me to grow up. Guess I'm finally starting to." The real test came when Marcus's old group of friends, the ones who encouraged his worst behavior online, started pressuring him to go back to his previous content style. They missed the funny Marcus, the one who made savage jokes at others' expense. "Come on, dude," his friend Tyler had messaged him. "Your page is dying. Nobody wants to see this inspirational garbage. Give the people what they want." Marcus had stared at that message for a long time before responding. "Maybe I don't want to be that person anymore. If that means losing followers, I'm okay with it." Tyler's response was harsh. "Whatever, man. You've gotten boring." It stung, but Marcus remembered Captain Hayes' words about choosing who you want to be every single day. Boring was better than cruel. Boring was better than building an audience on disrespect and mockery. At school, Marcus started noticing things he'd overlooked before. The janitor who worked late every night to keep the building clean. The cafeteria staff who served hundreds of students with patience and smiles. The crossing guard who stood in all weather to keep students safe. People doing important work that rarely got acknowledged or appreciated. One afternoon, Marcus approached Mr. Henderson, the elderly janitor who'd worked at the school for 20 years. "Excuse me, sir?" Mr. Henderson looked up from mopping, surprised. Students rarely spoke to him. "Yes, young man. I just wanted to say thank you for everything you do. I know we students make a mess and you always clean it up without complaining. I appreciate it, and I'm sorry I never said so before." The old man's eyes glistened. "Well, that's very kind of you to say. What's your name?" "Marcus Chen." "Well, Marcus Chen, you've made this old man's day. Thank you for seeing me." Mr. Henderson extended his hand and Marcus shook it firmly. That small interaction became a turning point. Marcus started making a conscious effort to acknowledge the people around him, the ones who often went unnoticed. He held doors open. He said please and thank you. He learned the names of the cafeteria workers, the security guards, the bus drivers. His sister Emma noticed and commented on it one evening while they did homework together. "You know what's weird? I actually like hanging out with you now. You used to make everything about you. Now you actually listen when people talk." "I'm trying," Marcus admitted. "It's harder than it sounds. My default setting is still pretty self-centered." "But you're trying," Emma emphasized. "That's what matters." In November, Marcus's English teacher assigned a project. Write about someone who influenced your life and explain how they changed your perspective. Most students chose parents, celebrities, or historical figures. Marcus chose Captain William Hayes. He poured everything into that essay. He wrote about his arrogance, his disrespectful behavior, the moment he was put in his place. He wrote about learning the captain's history, about their meeting, about the lessons that continued to shape his thinking months later. He wrote about the journal, the daily choices, the ongoing struggle to be better. His teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, pulled him aside after class when she returned the graded essays. "Marcus, this is exceptional work. Not just the writing quality, but the depth of reflection and honesty. Would you be willing to share this with the class?" Marcus hesitated. Sharing meant vulnerability, meant admitting his failures publicly, but maybe that was exactly what he needed to do. "Sure, I'll share it." The next day, standing in front of his English class, Marcus read his essay aloud. The room was silent except for his voice. He didn't sugarcoat his behavior or try to make himself look better. He owned his mistakes fully and described the painful process of confronting them. When he finished, several students had tears in their eyes. Mrs. Rodriguez stood and started clapping, and the rest of the class joined in. After class, 3 different students approached him privately, sharing their own stories of disrespecting others and feeling guilty about it. "How did you get past it?" A girl named Sarah asked. "I said something really cruel to someone online last year, and I still feel terrible about it." "You apologize if you can," Marcus said. "And if you can't, you commit to being different going forward. Every day is a new chance to choose kindness over cruelty. That's what someone taught me anyway." That evening, Marcus received an email notification. His social media account, which had been steadily losing followers, had suddenly gained several hundred new ones. People were sharing screenshots of his essay, which someone had photographed and posted. Comments poured in from people who related to his story, who felt inspired to examine their own behavior. But the notification that mattered most came from an unexpected source. An official email from the Palace Administration Office, forwarded from Captain Hayes's military email account. Marcus's hands trembled as he opened it. "Dear Marcus, Mrs. Patterson forwarded me the essay your teacher sent to our public relations office. I wanted you to know that I'm proud of the young man you're becoming. True courage isn't standing at a post in a uniform. True courage is choosing to change when change is difficult. Choosing vulnerability over pretense, choosing growth over comfort. You've shown that courage. Keep the journal going. Keep making the daily choice to be better. The path isn't always easy, but it's always worth it. If you're ever in the country again, please stop by. I'd enjoy hearing about your continued journey. With respect and admiration, Captain William Hayes." Marcus read the email 3 times, then a 4th. He saved it in a special folder, knowing he'd return to it whenever he needed encouragement or reminder of why he was working so hard to change. He opened his journal and wrote, "Received an email from Captain Hayes today. He called me courageous. 3 months ago, I would have thought courage meant being fearless or tough. Now I understand it means being honest about your flaws and committed to improving, despite how hard it is. I'm not perfect. I probably never will be, but I'm better than I was, and tomorrow I'll try to be better than I am today." Christmas break arrived, and with it came the annual extended family gathering at Marcus's grandparents' house. In previous years, Marcus had spent these gatherings glued to his phone, avoiding conversations, radiating boredom and superiority. This year felt different. He helped his grandmother in the kitchen. He played board games with his younger cousins without complaint. He asked his grandfather about his experiences in the Merchant Navy, really listening to the stories he'd ignored countless times before. His Uncle Tom, who had always clashed with Marcus, pulled him aside. "What happened to you, kid? You're like a different person." Marcus smiled. "I met someone who showed me who I was becoming, and I didn't like it. So I'm trying to become someone else. Someone better. Well, keep it up. This version of you is a massive improvement." On New Year's Eve, as fireworks lit up the sky outside his bedroom window, Marcus reflected on the past year. It had started with arrogance and ended with humility. It had contained his biggest mistake and his most important lesson. It had shown him both the worst and the best version of himself. He picked up his journal and turned to a fresh page. "New Year's resolution," he wrote at the top. But then he paused. Resolutions were often forgotten by February, empty promises made in moments of enthusiasm. Instead, he wrote, "Not a resolution, but a commitment. I commit to seeing people, really seeing them. I commit to choosing respect over mockery, kindness over cruelty, growth over comfort. I commit to remembering that everyone I meet is fighting a battle I know nothing about. I commit to being someone that 17-year-old Marcus at the palace gates would be proud to become. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being purposeful. Every day, every choice, every interaction. He signed it, dated it, and closed the journal. Outside, his family was gathering to watch the midnight countdown. Emma knocked on his door. "Come on, Marcus, it's almost midnight." As he joined his family, Marcus thought about Captain Hayes standing at his post, about the discipline and dedication it took to maintain that position day after day. He thought about the journal entry the captain had shared about a young soldier learning the same lessons Marcus was learning now. The countdown began. 10, 9, 8. His mother put her arm around him. 7, 6, 5. His father smiled at him with genuine pride. 4, 3, 2. Emma grabbed his hand. 1. Fireworks exploded across the sky, brilliant and beautiful. The new year had begun, full of possibility and promise. Marcus didn't know what challenges it would bring or what mistakes he might still make, but he knew who he wanted to be, and he had the tools to get there. His phone buzzed with New Year's messages from friends. Among them was one from an unknown number. "Happy New Year, Marcus. Keep choosing courage, Captain Hayes." Marcus smiled, typed a response, and then put his phone away. The moment was too important to spend staring at a screen. He was surrounded by family, standing on the threshold of a new year, carrying lessons that would shape the rest of his life. The arrogant teen who had mocked a royal guard felt like a different person now, someone from a past life. In his place stood a young man still learning, still growing, still stumbling sometimes, but committed to the journey. And that commitment, that daily choice to be better, made all the difference. As the fireworks continued their dazzling display, Marcus made a silent promise to himself and to the captain who had shown him the way. He would never forget the lesson learned at those palace gates. Respect wasn't something you gave only to those who impressed you or earned it through achievement. Respect was something you offered to every human being simply because they were human, because they had dignity and worth that existed independent of your judgment. It was a simple lesson, really. But simple didn't mean easy. It would take a lifetime of daily practice, of conscious choice, of remembering who he wanted to be even when it was hard. Marcus was ready for that challenge. More than ready, he was grateful for it. Because in learning to respect others, he had finally learned to respect himself.